Today, we're going to try and unpack something really significant. It's about how wars affects, well, they spread much further than battlefields. They hit global economies, supply chains, really our daily lives.
Mm.
Our mission here is to get under the skin of how this happens economically using insights from war's economic ripples, global impact, and consequences.
That's right. It's crucial to grasp just how connected everything is now. A conflict anywhere can, and usually does, send shockwaves everywhere else. We'll trace those ripples today from the sort of immediate market reactions to bigger shifts in trade and, well, people moving. It really shows how tangled up our economies are.
Okay, let's dig into that. First up, market instability and inflation. You hear about this all the time. Conflict starts, markets panic. They hate uncertainty, right? But the source suggests this war-driven uncertainty is maybe a bit different, more specific, like a fear about resources.
Exactly. It's not just general anxiety. It's often a very focused fear about, say, energy supplies or food,
Hmm.
especially if major powers or, key resource areas are involved. And the reaction is fast. Think about Ukraine. Wheat prices, oil, gas, they didn't just jump locally, they soared globally, almost overnight.
And that surge in prices, that's what leads straight to inflation.
Pretty much directly, yeah. Prices shoot up across the board.
Yeah.
That forces central banks to act, usually by hiking interest rates, and higher rates mean borrowing costs more for businesses, for you,
Right.
which naturally slows down investment, cools off the economy, impacts job growth. It's a tough cycle.
Hmm. And while markets are reacting, the actual physical movement of goods, our supply chains, they come under massive strain too. Modern economies really lean on these complex global networks, don't they? War seems to expose how, well, maybe fragile they are?
Extremely fragile. That's a key point. You see ports shut down, maybe airspace gets restricted, shipping routes become dangerous, but it goes deeper. Think about less obvious things getting stuck.
Like what?
Well, fertilizers, for example.
Yeah.
Crucial for global food production. Or microchips, they're in everything. A disruption in one small part can halt production lines thousands of miles away because one component is missing. Companies then face paying way more or just stopping.
And fixing a broken chain isn't quick.
Oh, not at all. Rebuilding those intricate global links, that can genuinely take years. So you get shortages and higher costs for a long time.
So trade gets disrupted, production stalls. That must flow through to government finances too, affecting government spending and debt.
Absolutely. When countries are in conflict, military spending almost always ramps up, significantly. And as the source points out, that money often gets diverted from other vital areas. Think healthcare, education, infrastructure projects.
They get squeezed. But isn't there sometimes an argument that wartime spending can spur innovation in, say, technology? Does the source touch on that side?
It focuses mainly on the financial burden, honestly. Countries have to borrow more to fund the war effort. Debt levels rise. This can weaken their currency because investors might get nervous, move money elsewhere. It creates this long-term instability, and it's particularly rough for poorer nations. When everyone's borrowing, their costs can shoot up, pushing them closer to, well, potentially defaulting on their
It's a
debts.
huge risk.
A very serious one. So while you might see some niche innovation, the bigger picture, painted by the source, is one of serious fiscal strain.
And it's not just about money on spreadsheets, is it? There's a massive human cost leading to refugee movements and shifts in labor markets, millions displaced. It puts incredible pressure on neighboring countries, sudden demand for food, shelter, jobs.
It does. And the source notes that dual impact, which is important. On one hand, you have this immediate immense strain on resources and social services in host countries, especially if those countries already face challenges like high unemployment. Providing support is a huge struggle.
But on the other hand, is there a potential long-term positive?
Well, yes, potentially. Over time, if integrated well, an expanded labor force with new skills can benefit an economy. But the immediate reality is often overwhelming. It really underscores how humanitarian crises and economic consequences are deeply linked, both short and long term.
Okay, finally, this idea of global polarization and trade barriers. Wars seem to harden alliances, leading to sanctions, new trade routes. You hear more about countries wanting to bring industries back home, reshoring, to be less reliant on others. Is that seen as a positive move for resilience, despite the cost?
The source really highlights the economic costs of that shift. Yes, countries are trying to reduce dependencies, often for national security reasons, it's understandable. But this move towards, let's call it economic isolationism, has a price tag.
Meaning,
meaning higher prices for consumers generally. You lose the efficiencies that come from global specialization from competition. Innovation might slow down too, with less cross-border collaboration. So the source basically argues that while security is the driver, the economic outcome is often reduced global growth overall.
so wrapping this all up, the key thing for you listening is that any conflict, doesn't matter how distant it seems, it really does send these major ripples through markets, trade, people's actual livelihoods across the globe. It just shows how tightly woven everything is.
Yeah, exactly. And if you take a step back, it's pretty clear. In this incredibly connected world we live in now, peace isn't just, a nice idea or a moral goal. It's fundamentally an economic necessity. It's the bedrock for any kind of shared prosperity. Something to maybe think about next time you hear debates about global stability, how much our everyday economic lives